I'm just going to do a quick shout out to UNE, the University of New England, and Dr. Morgan, who I believe is in our attendees right now. But Melissa, myself, and Pam, with the help of the Kennebunk Conservation Trust, the University of New England, and GOME, that we just heard about, helped to create this class. And it is really all about having the youth connect with community partners and really getting into the community and doing work that starts conversations and can really be mobilization for change. And our goal, you know, Melissa and Pam do a fantastic job of really empowering these youth voices and making them understand that they do have a place and a part in solving this crisis and really what real science is. And it is not without tears and bruises. We sometimes in December, everybody's all frustrated, but part of that is because it's not a canned experiment. We don't know what the end result is going to be. And so that can put people in a really uncomfortable position. Here we have to remind ourselves, okay, this is just what real life learning is, and it's uncomfortable and messy. And these students, really push themselves out of their comfort zones and embrace that. And so I am so personally thankful to work with Melissa and Pam, who are incredible educators, and to be the community partner for that is amazing. The Kennebunkport Climate Initiative has sort of, with the help of Kennebunkport Conservation Trust, been able to provide the landscape for some of these kids to do the amazing work that they're doing. But by all means, these educators and these students are the ones that are forging ahead and really making the difference. So without further ado, I'm going to start. Let's hope this goes well. The screen sharing, and we should get started. This is the Pam and Melissa and myself out at Goat Island as we are getting ready to, and that was our original project, was out at Goat Island. And the students were really working at how to get Goat Island off the grid. This really morphed into more of a study about the Gulf of Maine in general. And Melissa talked about the Gulf of Maine field study. So let's go ahead and go to the social media group.
Hi, I'm Sammy Shaves. I'm a part of the social media group and I'm a senior.
Hi, I'm Sophie Farrick. I'm also part of the social media group and I'm a senior at Kennebunk High School.
I'm Abby Larrabee. I'm also a senior at Kennebunk High School and a part of the social media group.
And Zach is unable to be with us tonight, so I would just like to thank Zach Ricker, who's also a senior and going to graduate here with from Kennebunk High School soon, and just thank you for your work, Zach.
So back in the winter months, our class decided to send out a survey to the public asking what people's views on sea level rise were. We received 73 responses from various states and 71 responses from our school board or our school members. These responses actually showed that a lot of people don't really know what sea level rise is, or they don't notice it and how it's affecting our community. So we decided to start the Slow the Rise campaign. The social media group, which I'm a part of, decided to create an Instagram page, which you can see on the left, and a Facebook page, which you can see on the right. Both of them are called Slow the Rise Maine. And we just really wanted to start conversations within the community about the threat of sea level rise. Next slide, please. Yes. So we learned that social media presents the opportunity to quickly spread our message. We received so much community feedback in the form of comments, likes, and shares, mostly on Facebook and mostly from adults. Comments consisted of questions, positive remarks, and even some constructive feedback occasionally, which taught us to appropriately communicate with community members, we were so happy to be able to start a conversation within the community pertaining to sea level rise, because we believe that change begins with a conversation. And I'm going to let Sophie talk more about that.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so social media has helped us engage with the community members and the public. Next slide. Our Instagram got quite a bit of traction from friends and peers, which is really cool to share our work from this class and hopefully get them excited to join this class at some point later if they're underclassmen. Next slide. While our Facebook has reached many community members and others, with approximately 50 likes on the page and almost 2,000 people reached on most of our posts. And yeah, and I'll hand it off to Abby to talk about what we have learned.
So social media taught us a lot about how to best present our content. Next slide. This was our launch post. So we started out by talking about what our goal was, what the purpose was, and we learned a lot from this post alone because we were taught how to, shout out to Megan, use different formatting programs to create an eye-catching graphic that didn't distract from our point. As Sammy mentioned, we sent out an awesome survey at the beginning of this project, and many of our community members shared pictures and stories, one of which was the image that we used for this post. Next slide. So Sammy also briefly mentioned that we received much constructive criticism from our commentary on our Facebook and our Instagram. So a good chunk of this post was constructive criticism. As you can see, the image might be sort of confusing because they're taken at different tides. At the beginning, we started using images that we had taken or community members had shared with us. However, these two images were supplied by Google, and we learned that by using two images from Google, our point got across a little bit less. So this post was entirely educational for both us and the community. We began using a disclaimer saying that we are high school students and that, well, we're high school students, sometimes we make mistakes. And so we continued using that throughout all of our next posts. Next slide.
August, can I interrupt you? Can you tell the audience what the photos are of?
Oh, yes. If you
Yep.
pop, which one? These ones are the past ones.
The previous slide, this slide right here.
These are two images from Gooch's Beach in Kennebunkport, I believe. I might be wrong on that. So as I mentioned, you can see the tidal river is at super different tide levels. I'm pointing to it with my mouse, but you can't see that. So yeah, that's Gooch's Beach. One is 1960s, I believe. Yeah, 1960. And the other one was from 2020. So this was one of our most successful posts on both Facebook and Instagram. We used images that we ourselves had taken. We included that disclaimer that we had used previously, and we received a lot. I think it was over 100 Facebook reactions on this post within the first day it was up. And everybody related to this post because it's Goose Rocks Beach, and that storm was only a few years ago, and it really showed the effects of sea level rise. These are our social media handles. On Facebook, we're Slow the Rise Maine. On Instagram, we're also Slow the Rise Maine. We have a few extra links, and they're described in our posts, and we have a QR code that will link us directly to that.
Next is our podcast group.
Next slide, please. Hi, everyone. My name is Anela McMichael. I am a senior, and I am a part of the podcast group.
My name is Tate Brown. I'm also a senior, and I'm also part of the podcast group.
And our last group member, Michaela Wright, is also a senior. She unfortunately was not able to join us tonight, so I will be sharing her voice. We decided to create a podcast for our Sea Level Rise campaign as an entry in the NPR Student Podcast Challenge. Regardless of the competition, we felt that a podcast is an effective way to present information to a community. The podcast gave us an opportunity to speak with individuals in our community as well as share our own voices. Tonight, we will be playing 3 short clips of our podcast for you and reflecting on the work we have completed. So first, we're going to hear a clip from Tate.
We have to make drastic changes yesterday in order to make an impact. However, we'll take what we can get.
Ms. Lucci emphasizes the fact that no amount of legislation or bills passed is going to completely eradicate the effects of sea level rise and climate change. Anything we can do at a personal level in our lives to lessen the effect of sea level rise or climate change is a good thing. And I think that is very important to keep in mind with this topic of sea level rise and climate change.
In that clip, Ms. Lucci emphasizes that there's already damage in queue that we have yet to see, except that we can't let that diminish our spirits and our efforts to mitigate sea level rise in the future. And I really like the point about how anything you can do in your personal life is a good thing.
My concern is actually implementation of adaptation strategy at the municipal level and at the state level, because we're going to have to choose which areas we protect. We're going to have to choose which areas where we retreat, and we're going to have to choose which areas we accommodate. And in some locations, it's going to be all 3 things that are used. In other locations, it might just have to be full retreat.
For any and all communities on the coast, sea level rise threatens their way of life while presenting them with the looming question of how to appropriately respond to the issue.
This clip is a short snippet of my interview with Pete Slovinsky, who is a marine geologist. I really enjoyed our conversation because he taught me a lot about the options that communities have to respond to sea level rise. Overall, I found the podcast experience to be a learning experience because, first of all, I had no experience with podcasts, and secondly, I was given a platform to really speak and hear with others in my community.
My grandfather, Fred Trudeau, who lives and owns a home on Goose Rocks Beach, will be speaking about his worries regarding sea level rise.
The higher the water rises, people's property values diminish. They could even lose their homes. So that's one concern. And, personally, I'm afraid my house won't be there for my grandkids to enjoy it. And our house is built is high. We built it higher than the average house out there. So we're pretty well protected for a long, long time, hopefully.
This is a clip from Michaela's interview with her grandfather, Fred Trudeau. He lives on Goose Rocks Beach and has been a part of this community for 32 years. She found it interesting to see how, from his perspective, he has seen the beach change and how his concerns have grown for his grandchildren to be able to enjoy what he has enjoyed. She says that this podcast has given her, as well as her group members, an opportunity to hear other perspectives as well as share their own. She emphasizes how much fun she had creating the podcast and hopes you enjoy it as much as we do.
Next up, we will have the presentation group.
Hi, I am Corinna Breck, and The reason that we decided to do this presentation as a group was to connect directly with various types of groups and leaders in our community.
Thanks, Corinna. And my name is Ruthie Metcalf, and I'm a senior.
I'm Ainsley, and I'm also a senior. Next slide, Leah. So we're all seniors, and we put together this presentation as part of our Sea Level Rise campaign. We're young with our own stories and hopes for making change, and this is our journey to slow the rise in our community and communities around us. Next. In a survey from a previous project, we asked community members to tell us their experiences with sea level rise. We had many results from people who shared their knowledge, saying that it wasn't a thing and that it might be a problem for the next generation. These results surprised us and showed us that more people should know and that we want to educate. Next. We know the environmental effects, but sea level rise is also going to affect our family homes, small businesses who rely on our coastline, and the unique Maine culture our coastal community depends on. We've had many opportunities as a class to interview climate experts alongside long-term members of the coastal Maine community. In an interview, Maine geologist Pete Slovinsky says how he's worried about the impacts on people, but how most people are now starting to accept that it's occurring. Next. We've learned over the past year how sea level rise affects communities outside of our own, ranging from Eastport to Wells to Mount Desert Island. But without statewide leadership and local action, families and communities have been forced to deal with the threats and effects on their own, leading to an unsustainable path.
It was impossible for us as students to ignore sea level rise in our own community as it consistently filled the roads and covered bridges in our town. We knew that it hadn't always been like this, but understanding and learning about the science behind it really solidified these concerns. Statistics like with just 3.9 feet of sea level rise, over 115 miles of road could be at risk during higher tide led us to understand that sea levels are rising faster than they ever have before. With impacts on coastal communities, vital ecosystems, and foundational industries, all which make up the culture of our state, we wondered why more people were not outraged at the effects of our rising seas. Next. These maps spoke to our class greatly, showing the loss of life and land in the places that we know so well. Most students in our class reported feeling alarmed, saddened, and worried when looking at these maps because in our hometown of Kennebunk, sea level rise means that the beaches we grew up on, the roads that we drive on, and the schools that we go to won't survive into the next generation. In the next 80 years, similar maps show projected losses similar to this across the state's coastline. Next. The Gulf of Maine is unique as we are not only facing rising tides, but rising temperatures as well. With the expansion of warming waters, the rapid rate of warming is causing sea level rise to drastically impact our communities. Today, business owners rethink their spots on the river and community leaders must work to protect all their constituents at risk. Next. The threats on, oops, sorry, Corinna.
Yeah, it's all right, Ruthie, no worries. The threats in our economy, community, and environment are apparent here. Everyone will be affected by our warming, rising waters, whether it is erosion of the beaches or less snowfall up north, leading to less snowpack, crucial to the fresh water supply. Here, the impact on our shores may be more visible, but just because one can't see the danger doesn't mean it's not there. Towns across the state have been left to deal with these problems alone, leaving homes and beloved traditions waterlogged and damaged by the waves. The best course of action is to band together and assess how sea level rise plays a role in your community. Though all towns may not face the same problems, we all have something to lose. Next. As shown, people of Maine have seen the effects of our seas rising and feel worried. With crosswalks underwater and our winters more vulnerable than ever, we need to help our state with this pressing matter. Flattened dunes and cracked seawalls are the start to something much larger. If more people in the community had awareness about these issues, we could make a larger impact. If the changes in your community can't be seen, how could they possibly be felt with warmer winters? The threats to Maine society can feel overwhelming, but there is action you can take, whether planting a garden, reducing food waste, carpooling, and especially voting to support climate change laws, bills, and amendments.
Without direct action from our community leaders and government offices to lead the charge towards directly lowering carbon emissions and curbing our rising tides, the Gulf of Maine will continue to face increasingly dangerous threats. Our homes, schools, and roadways will continue to go underwater, as will the future of Maine's workforce, real estate, and tourism industries. Next. The first commitment communities can make is to take these efforts townwide, starting with supporting action to deal with food waste, one of the largest contributors to climate change, responsibly by establishing municipal composting at the town, business, and residential level. Further, we should call for consistent and meaningful climate change and environmental science education in all local school districts, as well as regionally and statewide for grades 3 to 12. For tangible results, we can support the Maine state legislative bills actively working to combat sea level rise, already up for review, such as LD 1572, a bill to analyze the impacts of sea level rise. These policies may be responsible for saving the natural preserves, trails, and communities we as Mainers have a privilege of relying on.
Finally, we ask that you advocate for student representatives to be on boards that have decision-making and policy implementation power with regards to climate change, sustainability, and resilient efforts like the Climate Council of Maine and other environmental organizations. These asks dealing with food waste responsibly, supporting education in our schools, and those across the state and advocating for the voices of our youth at the decision-making table are just some small ways that you can start to slow the rise and set the correct example for families, businesses, and leadership groups in and around our town.
Now, if everybody would just take a moment, imagine a world where we take steps to solve sea level rise. Really just like close your eyes and think about it for a second. What do you see that is different? How can we make change, and how can that change be seen through? What we as students imagine is tackling sea level rise and climate change with innovation, determination, and a little bit of hope, so that generations after ours can enjoy the natural world without fear of its survival. But remember, whatever you can do to contribute is enough. Thank you for listening and watching the presentation. We greatly appreciate your attention and respect and hope you bring more climate change action into your life. You are now an important part of our group's journey and are someone who has enabled us to share this vital information. We have presented to Shelley Pingree's office, the RSU 21 School Board, the Kennebunk and Portside Rotary, and the Planeteers of Southern Maine, and now you. All of you impact our community greatly and can make fantastic changes and slow the rise. When all of us work together, we can be stronger. So please take a moment on your own to think about those questions. How can you make a difference? What needs to happen for that difference to be made? How can our community work together to make change now? Because later is too late.
I'd like to now welcome our video group to talk a little bit, introduce themselves, and then we'll show you the video.
Hi there, my name is Donovan Corcoran.
My name is Robin Gorham.
I'm Abby Nolette.
My name is Edward.
My name is Anthony Chukwu, and we're all seniors at Kennebunk High School.
We chose to make a video because we wanted to share the current issues surrounding the Gulf of Maine and how we can make a difference as a community.
Raising awareness is extremely important to us, and honestly, making a video is just a ton of fun.
Though we faced many challenges because of COVID, we are extremely proud of our final result.
Our class has reached over 5,000 members of our community, and we have nearly 2,000 views across 2 social media platforms.
Please enjoy our video.
Welcome to one of Maine's oceanside communities, home to over 1,000 Maine families who have lived here for generations and want to stay. Home to a plethora of wildlife, a rich independent culture steeped in the maritime heritage, the best seafood, and breathtaking scenery, all contributing to our state motto, the way life should be. We want to live and raise our own families here and be an active member of our community. We want our families to experience washing the sand off your bodies in the cold ocean after a long day at the beach, wandering in Maine's wilderness and embracing the natural beauties that surround you, skiing down Sugarloaf, the cold air hitting your face. We are proud to be Mainers. But by the time we're ready to settle down and raise our families, we will be faced with challenges and changes to the state we love.
Basically, greenhouse gases create kind of a layer over the earth that can trap heat as it goes out. So some gases go up and they disintegrate right away. Greenhouse gases can kind of hang up there for like years or decades. And in the case of carbon dioxide, it kind of happens in about 30-year cycles. So the carbon we're emitting today, we will still be paying the price for 30 years from now.
Sea level is rising. If we do nothing to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions, seas will be 11 feet higher, meaning that today's high tide mark will be tomorrow's low tide mark. This isn't just an issue for coastal communities. This affects all Mainers. If we ignore this looming threat, it will not only cost the state of Maine millions, but the livelihoods of many Mainers will be lost, altering our identity as a state and people, as well as the landscape for future generations.
What concerns me is that, ultimately development and projects and homes for people, affordability is going to get expensive, to mitigate some of the issues with climate change, it's going to cost money.
The cost will fall to average hardworking Mainers who are least able to shoulder the expense. For many communities, coastal retreat and inland migration is the only option.
So now what? Is that it? Not exactly. People across Maine, the nation, and the globe are taking action. The time for change is now. Nothing is impossible. Together we can help make a difference. Together we can slow the rise here in the Gulf of Maine and around the world.
I just want to take a second, first of all, to recognize the amazing amount of work that these students did and how amazing they came across. And I'm sure that you guys enjoyed that. We'd love for you to share your reactions in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to either ask them in the chat or in the Q&A section. I forgot to say that at the very beginning. They did perfectly. Of course, the hosts sometimes don't, but please feel free to put any questions in the question and answer section or in the chat. Those are both at the bottom of your screen. And we'd love if you have any questions for the students. They would be happy to finish. And we also have the asks. They do have some important asks, and I didn't share that screen. Nope.
After watching, we want everyone to reflect on our class's asks to our community, district, and viewers one final time. First, we ask for there to be continued and dedicated action regarding food waste management and recycling at the school district and municipal levels.
Our second ask is related to education. We ask for RC21 and district municipal action around climate change and sea level rise education, including climate change and environmental science education in grades 3 to 12, and the municipalities of Kennebunk, Kennebunkport, and Arundel to provide the community with sea level rise awareness, education, and action to residents.
And finally, we ask you to support the Maine state legislative bills actively working to combat sea level rise, now up for review, such as LD 1572, a bill to analyze the impact of sea level rise, LD 49, an act to invest in infrastructure to address sea level rise, and LD 983, an act to promote land conservation, working waterfronts, water access, and outdoor recreation. These laws will protect our coast and vibrant communities we rely on here and help to slow the rise.
And those are our final asks. Thanks so much.
Dr. Morgan, our UNE counterpart, has a question for you students. She would like to know what you would like to see from next year's class in regards to all the hard work that you've done. What are the next steps you'd like to see taken up by students in next year's class?
I would like to see this project be connected to the younger kids, because I think that that's something that really isn't being done right now. Like maybe continuing either the topic of sea level rise or just climate change in general, and connecting high schoolers to middle schoolers and even like maybe the older elementary school kids.
I agree with Anela. I think something we've been realizing is that we were able to take so many steps in this online format, but are really excited for future classes to be able to engage really meaningfully with especially the students in our schools, but also the community.
Had you been given the opportunity to mentor middle school or older and elementary school kids, would you have done that? Would you have liked to have done that? And how do you see yourself as a role model for younger kids?
I definitely would have taken the opportunity. Personally, I really like working with kids because they have such like open minds to things. And I know when I was younger, I really looked up to older kids. Like if we ever had the opportunity to work with someone older, I thought, oh, they're so cool. They know so much. And I really learned a lot from those experiences that I had.
I would have loved to work with the younger kids because one of my favorite field trips I remember from elementary school was actually going to the beach and looking at all the different sea creatures that lived in our ocean, and the middle schoolers kind of walked us through it. And then when I got to middle school, we actually did a unit on it to prepare for that field trip. And like I just think that it would be really beneficial to them and also to us to share our knowledge with them and for them to learn from us.
Thank you so much. I have a couple more questions here. What's the easiest way, in your opinion, to deal with food scraps for a family? Any thoughts on that?
So I think it definitely depends on what resources you have and the time and energy you're looking to put into it. Because if you have the ability to pay for the composted services, that's what my large family does, and it's less than a Netflix subscription. So we find that really beneficial. But if you're looking to not spend any money on composting, or the We Compost It program, then you can definitely have a compost turner in your own yard, or just turn over compost in your own yard. But that does take some effort. So it's really what you're looking for.
I also know that in municipalities, Kennebunk and up here in Freeport, town offices will provide compost bins to families. Oftentimes municipalities get grants, and they're often, there's a little blurb on a website or whatever that they have those that they can give to you for cost or free if you have an interest in that. All right, and then I have another question. Can some of you share?
Can I add on to the food waste?
Please, so sorry.
Just being mindful of your food waste, like when you're eating a big meal and you're like, there's no way I'm gonna finish that, maybe splitting it and saving some, just to like catch yourself if you know you're gonna end up throwing food away. Finding ways to save it and have it on a later date is really important too, and that's definitely not as much effort as composting specifically.
Thank you, Abby. That was really insightful.
All right. I have someone wanting to know if you guys can please share what you're going to do after high school to continue this important work in this area.
I would love to share if that's all right, Ms. Lucci. So I plan to major in ecology and environmental science and minor in political science, and focus on being the bridge between the environmental science aspect of this issue and the politicians, and sort of make that gap easier to translate across.
I can share too. I believe most of us are going into environmental science fields or related fields in that general vicinity. I'm heading up to the Adirondacks for wildlife and fisheries biology, and I'm hoping to continue the environmental impacts of composting and doing little things to help improve the earth for future generations as we go along.
I would also like to add to that. I'm going into a environmental engineering field. So I'm going to be working a lot in environments and actually designing solutions to problems. So
I can add on as well. I'm majoring in marine biology at UNE next year, and having taken this class, I'm really looking forward to making sure that this type of hands-on and student-led learning is really a part of my education, because I feel that we've made so much more of a difference in this class than any other science class that I've taken in the past.
Though I'm not specifically majoring in any science fields, I am planning on majoring in education and helping young minds specifically realize their interests in the science and the ocean and all those different biology relations.
I'd love to share too. I'm going to the University of Vermont for zoology, and I'm hopefully going to concentrate those efforts into conservation or rehabilitation, something like that. And I really realized that through taking this class, and also IB Environmental. I know Ms. Farrell's on this call, because it's super important and it's super interesting too. So I'm really excited.
Anyone else before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, I'd like to go. I'm going to be going to the University of New England next year, and I'm planning on studying environmental science there. And I think this class played a pretty big role in helping me make that decision, inspiring me to do that. And I'm really excited.
I can also share. I'm doing a minor in environmental science with a major in interior architecture. So I really want to bring like the sustainable, I guess, practices into that field and like the architecture field. So
Great. I would just like to give a shout out to Erin Boggs and Lisa McClellan. I'm sorry, Lisa Farrell, who are environmental science teachers at Kennebunk High School, who do amazing work with these students. And the three of us together are privileged to be working with the students of Kennebunk, Port Arundel. So there's some questions in the chat. One of them is, and feel free anyone to jump in, did you know much about climate change before this class? And I think most of you had an environmental science class before with Mrs. Farrell or Mrs. Boggs, so you probably knew some about climate change in general. But how did this class add to your knowledge?
I'd like to go if that's all right. I feel that I knew a great deal about climate change before this class, but I did not know the full extent of the effects of climate change on the Gulf of Maine and Maine in general, which is a state I love so much, and the effects of my hometown, or the effects of climate change on my hometown. This class really was eye-opening in that aspect.
I'd like to go as well. I just want to share the statistic that we learned like the first day that we came into this class, which is that the Gulf of Maine is affected by climate change more than 99.9% of the world, or something similar to that. And I feel like a lot of people have no idea, people that live in Maine who are so greatly affected by this. And just knowing that simple statistic, I think can promote a lot of effort and a lot of change. And yeah, it's really important to know what's going on in your own town and your own state. And this class helped a lot with that. And I definitely would encourage underclassmen to take this class. Whether you're interested in environmental science or not, it's really important.
Anyone else before I move on to the next question? Okay. In your opinion, do you think students and staff would be willing to give up driving to school instead of, let me just start over again. Do you think students and staff would be willing to give up driving cars to school and perhaps carpool and ride the bus?
So I got this one. Last year, the students in the Gulf of Maine class actually, their ask to the community was for people to start taking the buses. They learned, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Lucci, but they found that if students took the bus once a month, then they would reduce their carbon emissions very quickly. In my personal opinion, I don't know if I could give up, like if I could ride the bus, but I'm very open to the idea of carpooling. I got a pretty big car. We can all jump in the car. We can go to school together.
Corinna?
Yeah, I had a comment on that. We watched a film through another program that I attended, and they made a very interesting point. Cars are very personal objects to people. It's something like our room. It's decorated or it is branded as ours. And so it's basically like another place that is yours. Giving up that space is definitely difficult, but I think that if people know the threats and people know the actual, like the physical benefits of carpooling and taking the bus, more people would be open to it, especially if it's only once a month. And that's definitely something doable for most.
So let me ask you guys, do you think if we started off next year, considering vaccination rates are going up and the age for becoming vaccinated is getting lower, do you think that the district would embrace a monthly all hands on deck ride the bus to slow the rise? Would you encourage your fellow high school students to ride the bus once a month to lower the carbon footprint of RSU 21? Could you make the sacrifice once a month not to get dropped off by your parents and take the bus?
I definitely could. I've taken the bus to school every day since freshman year in elementary school and middle school beyond. But I think it would save the district money and a lot of time. So I think that this district would be very interested in promoting that as a monthly program.
I think we might have a school board member or two watching this. So we challenge you, school board members, to get some momentum going on a monthly ride the bus to slow the rise, K through 12.
Sorry.
I would just like to say that while it may be difficult to convince high schoolers to ride the bus, it would be beneficial to encourage them to find at least one person that they can drive to school, because that kind of cuts a carbon emission of a car. So thinking about it in those terms, like how many people could you pick up?
And that could even tie into our ask of education, especially with the younger kids, because imagine how excited they're going to be when they get to pick up all their friends in a carpool, and then they get to drive home after school and talk about their day. And that's nice for parents to have their kids out of their hair for a little bit. So I think it's very possible and very doable.
And to just extend on the possibility of this, anything that has enough a student base can be possible. With enough students encouraging other students to do something, it can be done, especially something as beneficial as this. And with enough students who want it to happen in the school board, I think that definitely influence can be, the student influence can be very strong.
Now, there was a question kind of far back in the chat, so do you mind if I just throw this one out there?
Please.
It's actually kind of for you, actually. Will this be an ongoing class or project in future years? Will it specifically focus on sea level rise, or will there be different topics?
Great question. So this class is under, I don't know, we have another 3-year contract with UNE, so that'll be great. So by the time we're done with our second contract, this class will have run for 6 years. Will we always focus on sea level rise? No, but we do have a pretty strong in-depth unit in regards to sea level rise, and action projects can vary. As long as it's related to climate change in the Gulf of Maine, and it all depends on which direction the students feel so moved to go and how we can best support them. Let's see, there's could staff and students bring their lunches from home on a weekly basis to cut down on food waste? I think most people do bring their lunches from home. We know that once we are post-pandemic, that we're gonna ask that all lunchrooms reinstate composting. That was done across the district pre-pandemic, and so we'd like to get that up and running post-pandemic ASAP. And I know, me personally, any food waste that I do have, I bring home and I don't put it in the waste stream at school.
Ms. Leach, I actually have a comment about this, if that's all right.
Please.
I find that it doesn't often matter whether the food is from school or from home. There are always going to be some people who don't eat the corn on the lunch tray, and there are always going to be some people who won't eat the crust off a peanut butter sandwich. And nothing against those people. It's just food waste comes from both areas.
So it has been a difficult task to get high schoolers to continue lunchroom composting. So you seniors, you've had a tumultuous junior year and an interesting experience this year. Do you think it's possible next year, when we're in person 5 days, because most of us will be vaccinated, do you think it's possible for your peers to get their act together and actually participate in lunchroom composting? Yeah, you want to talk about that a little bit?
I think it would be possible, especially if there's a sort of competitive element to it. In 7th grade, when we went to Kiev, it's a leadership camp. There was a competition called Ort Free. I guess it's not an official competition, but it was a little bit of fun. And if you had no food waste at your table, you would knock on the table and shout "Ort Free" in some fun way. And everybody got really excited for it. So everybody tried their hardest to eat every single scrap on the table and make sure that they had nothing going to waste.
Well, I realize that Friday is going to be our last class, but when we come to class on Friday, maybe we can talk about ways to promote composting in the lunchroom, and also